Hello and welcome to Green Pass Gaming. I'm your host Phlapp, and always in the chair co-hosting tonight we have Puxley.
Hello Phlapp, how you doing? Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you very much. I think we've literally just gone live on the system by the looks of things.
Yep,
always a little bit of a delay between what we can see and what's actually being broadcasted live on YouTube. So that does complicate matters somewhat. So yeah, welcome to the show. Got some good topics tonight. Looking forward to get my teeth into some of these. But I guess before we start any of that, might be worth catching up with what we've been playing during the week, because this is a show that's all about games and Xbox. And yeah, what we've been up to then.
So funnily enough, I haven't actually been playing any Xbox games this week. I've been playing PlayStation and Switch. I know.
Okay.
PlayStation side, as a lot of people might know, Ghost of Tsushima. I've been playing that recently. A really good game.
You enjoying that?
Yeah, really good. We can talk about it a bit later if you want. Yeah, I compare it to Uncharted quite a lot in terms of the graphical fidelity and stuff. I'm super impressed with it. It's kind of, I bought it on a whim almost after reading some reviews. So, and it's a good whim. It's kind of paid off, which is really good. It's just getting that. Yeah,
it gets lots of good reviews. So, how far from completing it are you then?
Oh God, I'm still on Act 1. I don't even know what the acts mean, but I'm on Act 1.
Okay, yeah, you've got many more hours to put into that thing then. I mean, I've got to be honest. I mean, obviously, as an Xbox gamer, I'm kind of jealous. It's nice to know what's going on the other side of the fence, and I don't currently own a PlayStation 4. My plan was to perhaps invest in a PlayStation 5 and play some of the backwards compatible titles on that. So just try and catch up on this generation, to be honest. Obviously, all my multi-plats have been on the Xbox, and I like the Xbox One X, but there isn't Spider-Man on there. There isn't Ghost of Tsushima, and all of those sort of AAA games that I need to get my teeth into. Really, I can't honestly call myself a true hardcore gamer if I'm not playing everything that's AAA. To be honest.
Yeah, I suppose other titles like God of War, I have that. I played it. I very strongly recommend that as well. I think, PS5 is probably the best time to jump into an older library, believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a dabble in God of War, and again, what they've managed to squeeze out of even the base PS4, let alone the PS4 Pro, is pretty. It's really impressive, in all honesty. I guess that's easy for it's always comfortable to look over the fence and think, oh, yeah, that's a pretty good game, to be honest. I mean, to be fair, I mean, the PS4 is the first PlayStation I haven't owned. I mean, I've owned PS1, 2, and 3. I don't know what it was about the 4. I don't really know. I was just never in a position where I felt I absolutely needed it. Perhaps until the end of the generation or nearer the end of the generation. Then, like I say, at that point, my thoughts were turning to the PS5 and just naturally assumed everything was going to be completely backwards compatible, which, I know the big PS4 games are going to be backwards compatible, but I thought they were going to go down the same route as Microsoft and make everything backwards compatible, but that doesn't seem to be the case, to be honest.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? I think everyone just kind of craves that, being able to play your PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games on a PS4, and of course that never really happened. I mean, some might argue that you could play it on their streaming service, PS Now, I believe it's called, which, I mean, yeah, it's great, but if you don't have good internet, which a lot of the world doesn't, in terms of the speeds required, then can people really nicely enjoy those older titles by streaming?
Well, I don't know if it's great. I don't know if great's the right word, but it's it's functional and usable. Yeah, you do lose something when you stream, and we'll probably talk about XCloud later, strangely enough, on that kind of front. But I had a dabble. Funny enough, I was playing God of War via PlayStation now on my PC, and it held up. I could play it. The lag wasn't so bad that it destroyed the game or anything, but I don't know. I just missed that sort of that instant reaction or response from the controller. The lag from streaming. It is a thing. I mean, you certainly couldn't play a first-person shooter or anything.
Yeah, I was going to say anything kind of fast-paced or relatively quick reflex required, then maybe it doesn't work then by the sounds of it. Or not yet, I should say.
Not yet, no. But like I said, perhaps we'll talk about XCloud a bit later on. So what else have you been playing? Is that just Ghost of Tsushima or?
No, so I've recently completed Paper Mario on the Switch, Origami King, as it's called. That's very good. I've not touched the Paper Mario series since I think the GameCube days or the Wii days, so a very long time since I last jumped in.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to necessarily review it now, but it's very good overall. I mean, it's got a kind of, I don't know if you've read much about it. The battle system's a bit, well, it's a bit give and take. Personally, you can either, it's got like a weird puzzle mechanic. So it's like a turn-based battle system, like most traditional turn-based fighters are.
Okay.
But yeah, you kind of do this puzzle bit at the beginning. So there's like these different rings which appear, and you have to solve this puzzle to align the enemies properly. And if you align them, you get a damage bonus. And if you don't, then you don't get the bonus, and they can probably attack you. And it goes into these different rounds, and it goes on a bit. Otherwise, story-wise, and the writing, I thought was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I had some moments when I kind of actually saw myself chuckling a little bit at some of the lines.
Okay, that's good. There's always humour in those sort of games, anyway.
Yeah, cause it's done by I think it's like a second party. Probably is the best way to put it. So it wasn't done Nintendo directly. I don't believe it actually developed it. So you can tell there's a bit of external influence involved in the writing. It's really good.
So you've been playing everything but Xbox or Xbox games, then, by the sounds of it.
Well, I'll tell a lie. So as I say, I'm a PC Xbox gamer. So on Game Pass on PC, The Tourist was actually released earlier this week. So I actually wanted to always jump into that for a while. Never got around to it. Seeing it on Game Pass, I jumped in. And you know, I actually quite liked it. I didn't quite know what to think of the kind of the Minecraft-looking cube voxel style, but I kind of got into it. It's still a bit mysterious. I don't really know what it's about at the point I'm at.
Okay.
Kind of going to these different islands and doing these, I suppose you'd call them quests or missions, but I'm doing stuff and I seem to be progressing, and I'm not quite sure what's going on, but it's piqued me enough that I'm happy to continue playing it at the minute.
Okay, well, that's cool. I've downloaded it. I saw that it had arrived and I've downloaded it. So that's waiting for me to put some time into that just to check what it's all about, to be honest. So
yeah, it's an interesting one.
Okay, so let's move on to Grounded then. I mean, this is kind of our first topic of the evening, really. I just thought we needed to have a good chat about this game because I think it's a game that's caught a lot of people out, and I've been having a blast with it, in all honesty. I think it's a really good little game. There's a few concerns I have with it. But overall, I think it could potentially be something pretty big. So at the moment, it's in game preview. I was lucky enough on the Xbox Insider to get a sort of a preview or a beta version and give it a go. And to be honest, this is pretty much the same thing. There's a few minor changes. And it walks you through a little bit of a story at first. The first thing I noticed is there is no real tutorial. Have you played Grounded? Have you had a go on it?
I have it installed on PC. I haven't yet had the time to turn it on, unfortunately. But
So it kind of dumps you straight in. It doesn't particularly hold your hand, which kind of baffles me for the sort of game that it is. But to be honest, anyone who's used to sort of crafting games, they tend to go straight in and know what they're doing anyway. It just doesn't seem to. There's no story attached to it, so which pleases me because that kind of means there's a lot more of that left to come. And it's obviously heavy on the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids vibe, and they pull it off. It's really good. I mean, not everyone's gonna remember those films or certainly the sort of nostalgia around those films, but some of the older people out there will, and I think it ticks that box. Yeah, I certainly do. It certainly ticks that box for me. It's a good little game. I just hope that they're not burning it out too soon, if you see what I mean, because there is quite a lot to do in this, and I think people are going to play it to death and get a bit bored, to be honest.
Well, I think it's interesting you say about that there's no real tutorial, because as soon as you said that, I know we spoke about this in the last stream, but I immediately thought about when we talked about Sea of Thieves, how when that first came out, there wasn't any real tutorial on that either, not least when I first played it. It kind of chucked you in, you had to figure it out. And again, a lot of people, myself including originally, kind of you get a bit bored of it because what do I do? So hopefully as this progresses, we can actually start to, maybe they'll develop a story around it. Maybe they'll actually add that functionality in. So it'd be interesting to see what they come up with.
Yeah, I mean, the world isn't, massively huge. I mean, it's not an enormous world, unlike obviously Sea of Thieves and stuff like that. I mean, I always got a little bit bewildered in Sea of Thieves about, just the enormity of it at first. And there was always that sort of panic that, you were going to come up against people that were just going to, raid you at the first opportunity and sink your ship and kill you and all of those sort of things. Obviously, Grounded doesn't have any of that, thank God. So it has a manageable size map, and there's it's pretty dense and there's a lot to see. I just makes me wonder where they're going to take this, and and how the story's going to unfold. Because I don't think I should probably know this. I don't think it actually goes for main release for a good few months yet, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I've read that as well. That it's, as you say, early preview. But it's quite interesting, really, because I think you get a lot of like shooters and battle royale genre type games now, which you always see releases like early access, and it stays in early access or a beta stage for a long time, which is kind of now normal. But for a game like this, to kind of see that treatment, I think is I don't know that to be much the case in many other genres of games. I mean, I know like if you're talking MMOs on PC, you see it a lot. But then they're titles which don't necessarily hit the big screen like Grounded has. So, yeah, I'm very intrigued to kind of see where they take it, really, because, as you say, it's caught a lot of people out by surprise.
Well, it surprises me that this actually went to game preview. I'm not convinced that this is a game that needs game preview, because it doesn't feel like they are experimenting with any new tech or, like you say, a big open world MMO. Unlike Sea of Thieves, that obviously really benefited from having a beta preview and a game preview on that, because you're tuning your servers, you're making sure it all works as one big cohesive world. But this seems to be sort of self-contained. I mean, I know there's a multiplayer element, but it's certainly not an MMO in any way, although perhaps they're taking it that way. I mean, but if they are, they're certainly not testing that with this game preview.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to think about a game like this being MMO style. I don't think I can picture 100 people running around plus to doing this, what we're seeing now, kind of just mining and doing stuff. I don't kind of see it as that kind of game, because I think, as you say, it's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids vibe, and you're kind of building a fort and stuff. But is it a survival? I mean, it's a survival game, but how far do we take the survival? Is there anything that can kill you in this game?
Well, yeah, spiders for a start. They one hit you, the spiders.
Oh, really?
We'll see some spiders later on in the game footage.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Okay. To be honest, it's quite an unforgiving game. Again, when you see the graphics and stuff, you sort of tend to assume that this is pitched at perhaps a slightly younger audience. But it's quite brutal in its approach to sort of getting one hitted by these bloody spiders that sort of creep around and stuff. It's a little bit unbalanced. There's quite a few glitches actually. So again, perhaps that's what the game preview is all about. I don't know about the MMO aspect. I don't think it would lend itself to the story particularly, in all honesty. But
no, I don't either.
Other than we've been shrunk and it's a little bit of a surprise to us. We don't really know what the story unfolds. I mean, there is an element, without raising any spoilers, where you go into the tree and there's a sort of a science station. You'll see it again later on in the footage. So there is obviously a story that's been written for it. And to be honest, from this preview, I can't really second guess what it's going to be. I'm just really intrigued by this game. I think it's taken a lot of people by surprise, and I think it's going to do well. I think if they can keep up the momentum. And apparently there's going to be monthly updates when it is fully released. I think they could do really well with this. I mean, I'm assuming you're going to end up inside the house in a next door neighbour's garden and things like that. I don't know how far they can push the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of game engine like that. I just don't know how far the story can be pushed like that. But
I think that's an interesting point. I think what you just said is almost like, that sounds like it could be good DLC, right? Like, you're at, so you come out of this garden, as you say, into a house, into another garden. I mean, maybe that garden could be completely overrun or something else. Like new insects or the rest of it. So I think that's a good point. I think there's definitely a lot of scope for additions in that regard. Yeah.
So again, is this going to be one of those games that's constantly updated? Is it going to have a slow start? I don't know. There's so many unknowns around it, really. It seems so strange because, a game that you can physically play and get a handle of, there's still so many unknowns about it that it seems a little bit of an odd situation to be in, really. Obsidian have been sort of leaking bits and bobs about it, but they certainly haven't unfolded their master strategy with where they plan to take this game. And I think this, it was a passion project. I think they were just sort of seeing if it was going to be popular. I think that's one of the reasons it might be in game preview, in all honesty, as just testing the water to see if this format could actually be popular. And just before we went live, I just had a quick look on Steam on their global sales, and this is actually second in Steam's chart of global sales.
That's impressive.
And in game preview, this is selling for £25. I don't know what it is in dollars. I didn't check out dollars. I'm guessing it's roughly $29.99. I mean, this is a game that you can get in Game Pass, and people are still paying $25, $30 for it. That's impressive.
I was going to bring that up as well. That for PC and Xbox to have this on Game Pass and play. Like, I looked at this originally, I found it interesting, but I don't know whether I'd fork out that £25, $30 for this on my own. But then, so it's great that I know I can jump into it. But yeah, I mean, as you just said, you've proven it there. Like, for people that don't have Game Pass or aren't interested in it, it's definitely surprising that so many people are that intrigued by it that they're willing to pay, as you say, like just short of £25 or so on this game. And as you say, it's not even a full title yet. It's technically a preview.
Well, without wishing to sort of steer off course from Grounded, let me give you some other statistics. So out of the top 10, we've got 4 of those are Xbox games. So let's just quickly read them out. So number 1 was Fall Guys, which I think you've been playing, haven't you? Have you downloaded it?
No, I haven't yet, but I've been watching some footage around it. I don't think it's actually released yet, I don't believe. I think it was in a beta for a while, but I've not touched it yet. I want to, though. Grounded
was in second place, £25. Then Horizon Zero Dawn in third place, and then you've got Flight Simulator at £60. Now that's obviously not. It's obviously not in Xbox console Game Pass. I don't know if it's in PC. You're more likely to know that than I am, actually.
I believe it is. Yeah, I believe it's coming out.
So that's at fourth place for £60. I'm guessing $70. Fifth place is Sea of Thieves, £35. Sixth place, Red Dead 2, and seventh place, Halo: The Master Chief Collection. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, all 4 of those games are in Game Pass.
That's impressive, right?
And adding up, they come to over $150, £150. And currently, Game Pass Ultimate in the UK is £11 a month. So that's, for that 150, you can get a year's worth of Game Pass. I don't know why people are spending money on these games when you can just buy Game Pass. I don't understand.
Yeah, that's a weird one, isn't it? I mean, I know we've had chats about this in the past and previously, just before we went live, about this kind of thing as well. That I don't know. Do people not want to buy into it yet? Do people still think it's like a gimmick? Obviously, I think Microsoft have currently proven that this isn't just a gimmick that they're going to give up. Actually, this is going to be almost the norm, I think, moving forward with gaming as a whole.
Absolutely, and I'm not even sure it's I mean, these were global sales, so I'm not even sure it's a territory thing, because as far as I'm aware, Game Pass is available in the vast majority of Xbox's territories around the world. So it just baffles me. But it's great for Microsoft, and to be honest, it's also a good yardstick, shall we say, to sort of test how popular these games are. I mean, the fact that obviously Horizon Zero Dawn PlayStation games in there, number 3.
That was a recent release on PC, though, wasn't it? So
it was. But Red Dead is at 6. I think that's probably the latest online DLC that's come about. That's probably done that. But it just goes to show that obviously, that Microsoft and Sony's IPs are valuable, really valuable. But that just goes to show how much great value Game Pass is. In all honesty, I mean, everyone says it, everyone knows it, and yet there's obviously a massive audience out there that still haven't bought into it yet. I don't know.
The other side of the coin, I suppose, is for PC gamers, I think it's absolutely great. But what do you think this means in terms of people then not buying an Xbox because they know they can just buy it on PC? Do you think it matters that maybe people don't buy the Series X?
I don't think Microsoft cares, to be honest. As long as you're subscribing to Game Pass, I don't really think they care what platform you're playing it on. It's not. I don't think it's so much about. Microsoft have come under a little bit of fire, and perhaps Phil Spencer specifically, because of a little bit of seeming hypocrisy between. He's saying that the Series X is the most powerful console to date. And they're obviously pushing that narrative to try and sell the Xbox One X, Series X console. But they did it on the Xbox One X as well, to be fair, during the PlayStation 4 era. But obviously, in a slightly different breath, they're saying we don't really care which platform you pay it on, as long as you're playing Game Pass on our platform. So there is a little bit of mixed message in there. But ultimately, I don't think Microsoft really care what platform you're playing it on, as long as you're paying for Game Pass each month.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, and I like that everything you just said there. I think almost proves on to what I was going to say, and that the way I see it is that Microsoft aren't seeing Xbox as just a console anymore, and it's not just a brand. It is almost its own service, just like every other Microsoft service out there. So I think it's a good thing in a way that they're treating it that way. But then when you look in comparison at the competition, which is mainly Sony and PlayStation, I mean, I think PlayStation, yes, it has that kind of brand image, but at the same time, I think PlayStation is still seen as that nice shiny box under your TV cabinet. Whereas I say, I think Microsoft and Xbox are moving toward Xbox is just a service, as you say. I know we're going to probably talk about it soon about XCloud, because that's the next thing in terms of throwing Xbox out into people's hands that maybe can't afford an Xbox or don't even have a PC to play on.
No, I completely agree, and I'm still currently trying to do a video at the moment around Xbox All Access and my thoughts around that. I think Microsoft are a little bit at odds with themselves in a strange sort of way. I don't think personally that the console generations are anywhere near coming to an end. I know everyone sort of seems to think that with cloud gaming and things like Game Pass that consoles won't exist. I personally think that we might actually start seeing an acceleration in console releases and launches on the back of All Access. Microsoft are following a strategy that's been around in the mobile phone sector for a couple of decades more. And they do this thing, the mobile phone sector, where they incrementally upgrade their mobile phone devices. I think Microsoft, they absolutely love the subscription service. So, you think of Office 365, Game Pass. It's what they call an SaaS, so software as a service that you pay for on a monthly subscription. And that basically levels out their profits for the next few years. When you first launch a console, you have a feast and a famine when you first sell the console. But when you use things like All Access, and you can actually spread that cost over 2 years, interest-free, you also bundle in Game Pass Ultimate as well, not just any Game Pass, the top tier of Game Pass. What happens after 2 years? Because they first brought this out for Series Xbox One X, I believe. And they said that, at the end of your term, if you carry on paying, you can then upgrade to the next generation console. And they're also doing this for the Xbox Series X. So I'm thinking, well, in 2 years' time, is it absolutely beyond reason that Xbox or Microsoft might actually launch a incrementally improved Xbox Series X? Let's call it Xbox Series XL for argument's sake. That's got a 3 terabyte built-in SSD. It's got more CUs, compute units in the GPU. It's got a higher clocked CPU. It's got better spec ray tracing. So, not a complete redesign. It's not back to the drawing board. It wouldn't cost them, millions and millions in R&D. Just an incremental upgrade like you do on mobile phones. At that point, when you're coming to the end of your payment term for your Series X, if you're paying for it on all Xbox All Access, are you going to think to yourself, well, actually, I can still afford this $35 a month. I'll continue paying that and then make sure I have the absolute best console going forwards. Because if you think about it, the Xbox Smart Delivery will easily accommodate that, because you're always guaranteed to get the best version of a game. So if developers can actually leverage the more ample compute units in the GPU and the better ray tracing hardware, the faster clocked CPU, I think many people will actually think, you know what, I'm going to continue paying this monthly subscription, have the best console. And I'm just wondering if that's what Microsoft's plan is, because I know that Xbox All Access is being launched all around the world. I think it's currently in 3 territories, but they're actually opening up to many more markets around the world. And I think it's going to be the next biggest thing after Game Pass. I'm intrigued to know what you think.
Yeah, I've got some interesting thoughts on this. Mainly around, so you mentioned about having like mid-generation updates and upgrades and basically better hardware specs, because hardware is obviously increasing at a monstrous speed at the minute, especially in the last 5 years in the PC space. But I have mixed minds of this because quickly going back to because I have the PS4 and again comparing that to the PS4 Pro. I know a lot of people love that jump, but when it comes from a developer's point of view, I don't know. I feel like developers are almost going to be held back by the fact that no matter what they want to design for, so if they want to say design for the Xbox Series XL, as you said as an example, they would still have to then support like a base Generation 1 Series X, which may be a minuscule in power capability as what the next system could be. I personally, I can see the advantages of everything you said, and I completely agree with it. But I'm almost playing devil's advocate here because I'm also thinking that
No, that's fine. No, that's fine.
Because if people want to if people are able to pay for upgrades and they're happy to pay a monthly fee, that's fine. It's a great service that Xbox is doing to be able to provide that as an option. I myself, I don't know if I would personally do that. I quite like the idea of paying it and then knowing that I own this machine. I suppose I'm thinking this from the fact of if everyone's financial situation was to change, how do you then afford how do you afford to pay it off? It's like almost this thing that you need to worry about.
Well, again, we've been in this sort of mind frame with mobile phones for many years, and I guess people can square it away a little bit easier with mobile phones because, well, I'd probably use my mobile phone, as I call it, the least as a phone, to be honest. It's more of an internet streaming thing for me. I watch movies on it and all sorts of stuff. So its phone capability is probably what I use it for the least, strangely enough. But that said, it's still an emergency device that I can use if I'm stranded somewhere and I need to get help, I suppose. So, I guess in lots of people's minds, it's considered an essential.
Yeah, like a mobile phone in today's world is almost an extension of every person, isn't it? It's this thing you need to have on you at all times, like a wallet and your house keys.
It is, and I appreciate consoles don't tick that particular box, but if you've got youngsters, if you're a parent and you want to buy a console for your child, but you can't afford the upfront £500, but you can squeeze $35 a month, then you may consider it, to be honest. I take your point about obviously being held back by probably the original Xbox, the VCR type one, the big square black thing. I think they will start to squeeze that out, to be honest. So a little bit like mobile phones, if you think about it, particularly Apple, as new operating systems come out and things advance, they have to start leaving some of their legacy stuff behind. If you think about it, Microsoft can't indefinitely keep supporting all of the old legacy stuff. They are going to have to shut their door on that. But don't forget that the one ace that they've got up their sleeve is that if they're able to provide Xbox XCloud on that device via streaming, then essentially you can still get the latest games. It's just that you're having to stream them and they're not being run natively from the box that you own. So even Microsoft have got that bit covered, in all honesty. I think this is their strategy, if I'm honest, and I'm hoping that by the end of August, we might have a little bit more clarity on the particular direction they're going, because I think they're going to have to start showing their hands sooner or later with this, in all honesty.
Yeah, I think what you say about XCloud is also, as I say, very akin to what we was almost just saying, in that you've got like mobile phone services, which is almost an extension of yourself, and not everyone needs one effectively in today's world, but you don't necessarily need an Xbox or a gaming PC in your life, or you can't afford it. So yeah, XCloud, I think, is, as you just said, Microsoft's nice gap of, we understand that these people are out there, but equally we also understand that the large majority of people have a phone. So why not add this service into that as well, and you can play wherever you want? And I suppose this is also testing the limits of streaming capability, isn't it? Because I think it's 10 to even 5 years ago, the thought of streaming stuff was almost not very good, or it was in its infancy, I suppose.
Well, we had was it Ouya? What was that thing called?
Yeah, that was the Ouya.
Yeah, those sort of things. Yeah, and a lot of it's sort of Android powered and stuff. Like you say, 5-10 years ago, this would, XCloud wouldn't have really been conceivable. Probably not so much from the end device, in all honesty, but perhaps more from the sort of Microsoft Azure servers and things like that. The infrastructure behind the scenes that actually support this was probably not in place either.
This is XCloud's been in development for a long time now, hasn't it? I think we've seen it pop up at E3 for the last 3-4 years now. Again, we didn't have an E3 this year, but that hasn't stopped Microsoft from talking about it a lot. I suppose after all this time of hearing about it, it's quite nice to know that it's actually coming officially released as part of Game Pass Ultimate on September 15th. So this thing that we're now talking about as a hypothetical, is it going to kick off? It's like, well, now you can try it out with your Game Pass Ultimate subscription in just over a month's time.
I've also got another theory around Game Pass. I'm full of theories, so I do apologise. But
are we all?
And I think I mentioned it last week's podcast. But Microsoft have historically struggled to break into the sort of Japanese market. And I think that Game Pass is their route into the Japanese market. I don't think people over there are so willing to buy into the Xbox brand, as in buying a box for under their telly and the hardware. They have a fantastic mobile network service.
Mobile gaming in the Asian markets is, I think, one of the top in the world, isn't it?
That's what I mean. It's a very affluent society like that, and they would have the vast majority of people would have a device that's more than capable of being able to handle something like XCloud. I think this could be Microsoft's route in to Japan and the Far East like that, to be honest. I think it's a really clever and cunning move, and Microsoft are actually using their strengths in a very clever way. And obviously their strengths is their sort of back-end infrastructure with the Azure servers and things like that. And so much so that even Sony are having to buy into that and actually use the Microsoft cloud themselves to be able to host some of their own services for PlayStation.
It's almost ironic, isn't it, to see that?
It is. But it goes to show you the strength of Microsoft. They don't get things right all of the time. In fact, they get things wrong quite a lot of the time, in all honesty. But I think their overall arching strategy is really sound. And although, assuming or mentioning that, we might have an incremental upgrade in 2 years might, set the internet on fire if Microsoft were to mention that. But actually, I think as gamers, we would get used to that very quickly in having the latest and greatest. And to be honest, imagine you could do that on PC. If you could pay £30 a month and guarantee that you'd always have the best PC spec out there, lots of people would do that. And I think this might be what Microsoft are offering.
But I suppose it all comes down to the same portion of, unlike a phone contract, which is seen as a necessity. I mean, are they? It's luxury entertainment, I suppose you'd categorize it as, given at the cost of some of these devices. I mean, are people? I know we're talking the pros of it, or I'm talking about trying to come at this from a different perspective. Like, do people see this as enough of a need to still buy into that ecosystem?
Oh, you know what? I think it's a perfect storm. I think perfect timing because, with the coronavirus as rampant as it is, I think people realize how valuable, home entertainment like this actually is. I think all of the home entertainment companies have done particularly well during this.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. I think it's come at the perfect time to actually demonstrate to people how valuable gaming is as a community and as a pastime, to be honest. So, yeah, it's an interesting move. Well, let's move on to our next topic because we've kind of covered some of this, but obviously Xbox have been mentioning or alluding that there is possibly an August type either event or sort of rollout of information. I don't think anyone's clear on what that's exactly going to look like. It certainly won't be an event, I don't believe, like we had in July.
No, I'd like to think that. I mean, again, we've just got official word that XCloud is now coming out mid-September. So I'd like to think that the August show is going to be a good opportunity for them to at least plug it and say that XCloud is now coming officially. Phil Spencer in person is going to say this to everyone, and maybe we'll see some clips of them showing it off, and maybe one of them pulls out a new phone.
let's create a tick list, shall we? So we think obviously XCloud will be officially not launched. To be honest, it's already been announced, hasn't it? That that September the 15th is the sort of official release date. I don't think that we still know the final name, to be honest. So I think perhaps we might be furnished with the actual name of XCloud.
Good point.
I think they quite like XCloud. It might not change, to be honest.
It's like not to derail, but you might have heard of an indie game called Untitled Goose Game.
Oh yeah, I've completed that.
Let's say that title was a temporary title which the community loves so much it stuck. So, and I think I'm getting that way personally of XCloud. It makes sense to me. I know what it is as a service, but knowing these big companies, I imagine they may rebrand it. But then again, people now know it as XCloud, so keep it the same, surely.
No, I absolutely agree. And you know what? This is one thing that's really surprised me about Lockhart and Xbox Series S. And that's probably a perfect time to bring this particular situation up, because let's put a tick in our box for that. I think Lockhart will be
officially reveal your Series
several
S.
things. Yeah, several things actually, because we don't even know what it looks like. We don't even know what it's going to be called. But the strange thing is, everyone on the internet is calling this thing the Series S or Lockhart. And if they don't actually call it that, I think that's going to be quite jarring, to be honest, because Microsoft have let the community sort of grow and come up with their own name for this thing. So if they don't call it Series S, I think that's going to be a bit of a surprise and quite jarring.
Yeah, a bit of a slap in the face, I guess. It makes perfect sense to everyone, right? Because Xbox Series S was a thing. Sorry, the Xbox One S, I mean, was a thing, and it just makes sense. Keep it the same, keep it consistent.
The only downside to that is obviously they've stopped production of the One X. So what we will have in the lineup is the Xbox One S, the Lockhart, whatever that's going to be called, and the Series X. So I don't know if having a Series S and a 1S might be a little bit confusing to the consumer, potentially. So they might call it something different, or perhaps they might rebrand the Xbox One S, but that's probably more confusing than anything else, in all honesty.
I'd like to think, though, that yes, they've, as you say, discontinued the One X now, but I'd like to think that once, if they do reveal a Series S, then it makes perfect sense, surely, at that point to say, well, we've discontinued the One X. Why do we still need the One S? Because we want our Series line of Xbox consoles to be the next thing that everyone wants to buy. And plus, because it's backwards compatible, and assuming they keep the price points about the same, if not just a bit more than what we expect in terms of compared to the Xbox One, because of the backwards compatibility, it's almost like, why still sell a One?
Yeah, no, that's true. Like I say, as things progress, and the other thing that sort of plays into what I was talking about earlier with these incremental upgrades is obviously it's very easy to call, the next incremental upgrade the Series XL or something without it being a completely new console. It's just a different spec or grade of the existing console, if you see what I mean. So again, it's a little bit more evidence that I think things might be moving that way, to be honest.
Well, one of the things I remember was meant to be, just to finish off, sorry. One of the things I think was mentioned a couple of years ago was that one of the things that I think it was a Microsoft that said what they would like to have done is to create a console there where you can almost buy the parts individually. So if a new CPU or something comes out as its own little module, you could just replace it, and then that's your upgrade kind of thing, rather than paying for a whole new unit. But of course, I know you almost need to have some kind of PT level building experience.
That's called a PC at that stage, I guess.
But it makes sense, right? Surely, from a consumer perspective, to pay a lot less for a new CPU than pay out for a whole new box.
I get that. I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking about the wastage and what you would do, if you were to pay into this subscription service where you do get incremental upgrades at the end. What do you do with your old device? Perhaps as with mobile phones, there's an element of being able to part exchange it, or it would be yours to keep at that point, because essentially you've paid for it. It is your device at that point. You've had an interest-free loan, as it were, to pay for it monthly. But I don't know. That's the one flaw in my sort of theory, to be honest. I'm not sure what you would do with the old device. Don't know.
Yeah, I mean, talking about cost, I think that brings us back round into our predictions chat about just derail a little bit there, about what we want to expect. I mean, cost of the unit.
Cost.
It's the perfect time now, right? We're close to the holiday season. Or we're coming up to it. People are going to start saving for it, know how much they need to save. Now's the time, the date and the price.
Well, again, this is another slight confusion for me around the Lockhart, because obviously, the Series X, we know what it's called, we know what it looks like. There's only really two things left in my mind left to disclose, and that's obviously, like you say, the cost, three actually, perhaps, when it's coming and when we can pre-order. But with Lockhart, we don't even know what it looks like. We don't know what it's called. We don't know how much it's cost. We don't know when it's going to arrive. We don't know when we can pre-order. You know what I mean? There's so many things that we don't know about this Series S that I just think it would be a little bit of an information download, or overload perhaps, to do all of that in one go. Like I say, at least with the Series X, we know what it looks like. We know its technical capabilities, its spec. It seems an odd one to me. I think we're at the very least we're going to get the cost for the Series X.
I kind of see it as, if they were to reveal it, I would imagine they probably wouldn't put too much time on it, because the Series X is the main box that they want to try and sell off, right? Whereas this kind of rumored hypothetical Series S is obviously its little brother or sister, whatever.
Oh yeah, but you say that. Actually, I think the Series S is the one that's going to sell by the bucket load, to be honest. I think the Series X will obviously attract the early adopters and the hardcore gamers, the people with 4K TVs that is capable of 120 frames a second and, X, Y, and Z. But, there's many, many Xboxes out there. There are actually a second Xbox that sat in some sort of kid's bedroom with a little 1080p screen. Those they probably outweigh the Xboxes under big TV screens probably by a factor of 2 or 3. I would have guessed, in all honesty. So I actually think the Series S is going to be the big seller in all of this.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know when I was a kid, not having a console, the thought of my parents then paying for an upgrade was not, that would not have happened. So I can definitely see your point now. I think you're very much correct in, if that is what happens and the Series S is a thing that it does exist, then that fits that market perfectly, doesn't it?
I think it does. And again, I think Microsoft have been very clever around this. Unlike the PlayStation 5, where they've obviously got their two SKUs, the discless version and the premium version. I don't think there's going to be much of a sort of a cost disparity between the two, to be honest. I think there may be £50 or $50, $100 absolute tops, but I think that the cost difference between the Series X and the Series S could be as much as $200, $250.
Yeah, I'm thinking around that region, and it makes perfect sense why you would do that. I think we mentioned it on the last stream as well, that this rumored Series S will be basically a 1080p machine with a downclocked GPU, CPU.
Yep.
But it can still run everything, and I think for as you say, for young kids or even adults who just can't afford or don't have a 4K TV and aren't that interested in upgrading and just want a cheap unit where they can do all their gaming, it's a perfect option. If you're paying, say, I think it's currently rumored, I think I'd read before, about maybe $250 worth to $300 for a Series S, if that is correct. And if that is the case, that's a bargain, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, there has been talk early on about, can Xbox actually make a loss on the Series X? Can they get it to us for $400? That's unlikely, because I think personally that if Microsoft are going to make a loss on anything, it will be on the Series S. And the reason they will make a loss on that rather than the X is because I think the Series S will sell 5 times the amount that the X will. And if you can actually gradually claw that money back through things like Game Pass, even All Access and things like that, then that's where you're gonna concentrate your efforts and perhaps potentially take a short-term loss for a very much long-term gain, just in the numbers.
Yeah, I think this comes back to what we were saying earlier about the value of Game Pass, and almost this, again, it kind of brings us back to what we talked about previously in the last stream about the rumors that gold is now going to be free moving forward. I think that's now being more strongly asserted now in news outlets, that it's now looking more likely that gold is free. And if that is the case, and you're a parent with a young kid who wants to have the new Xbox and you buy them the cheaper Series S, then if you was going to pay for an Xbox Gold for subscription for your child anyway, and Game Pass is almost the same price, but they get all of these games that they ever want to play for months on end, surely that's, as you say, you make a loss on the unit. But if you've got that many more people paying into Game Pass and every other service, that's where your money comes back, surely.
Absolutely. Microsoft have been very consumer friendly around this whole new generation that's about to come to us, and I think a lot of it stems around parents and things like that, because I think there's a lot of adults that play Fortnite, and that's absolutely fine. But to be honest, Fortnite wouldn't have been the phenomenon that it is, and Roblox, without the younger generation playing this game, spending money on it and things like that. So I think Microsoft are very clever and going for the parents and perhaps the younger generation and really, really catering for them on many levels. I think they're being catered for on a hardware level, in the fact that the Series S is probably going to be cheaper, in the fact that Microsoft will probably take a loss on it. You've got the great value of Game Pass, absolute great value. And most children have phones, so if they get Game Pass Ultimate, they can probably play their games on their phone. And if they do the Xbox All Access that you can incrementally upgrade, then I think parents would like that as well, because if they can actually find the money for that monthly cost, then their child will never not have the latest console. And that's quite a thing, to be honest. I don't think that's ever existed before, in all honesty. And I think that will be a real winner with parents.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I was going to quickly bring it back. You just reminded me as you were saying that, talking about, again, young children that obviously want this stuff. When I think back to when I was a kid, when PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1, that kind of era, when, nobody cared about tech specs then. It was just the unit, right? You just got given what it was. You didn't have to understand anything. But nowadays, like, all these systems are, you're given all the tech spec and everything else which is shown, which is quite easy to think that maybe young kids won't understand it. But at the same time, at least in the UK now, computing and programming and computer science is now part of a curriculum that you have to study it. So I think that we know that kids are getting more tech savvy anyway, but seeing as they're learning this stuff in school now, I think that kids are even more clued on into these tech specs and what they want from it. But then hopefully they can see the cost benefit for maybe getting a new system. But then again, it's convincing mum and dad or your guardian, isn't it? So,
no, I completely agree.
Please get a better one because I know it's better.
Well, the strange thing is, up until perhaps this generation, a mid-generation upgrade only really looked like a slim version of the base unit, and probably slightly cheaper. It very, very rarely had any sort of extra technical specs. It was just smaller and a bit cheaper, to be honest. So yeah, we're moving into an era that we've not really been in before, and it started obviously with the Pro. PS Pro and the Xbox One X, the first true mid-generation upgrade. And, like I say, if you follow that curve, I think that will possibly speed up because, like I say, lots of people are concerned that this is the end of a generational sort of console strategy, but I'm not convinced it is, in all honesty. So what do you think about release date? When do you think we can expect this? Because there were rumors that I think it was due in September. Then there's been some rumors around it October, but I think lots of people are going back to thinking actually it might be early to mid-November now. So what do you think on that?
Yeah, I personally think it's going to be late October, early November, and I think they'll try and fit it in with the releases of big titles such as Assassin's Creed Valhalla and a load of other big hitters coming out at the end of the year. I think it's the perfect time because you release a game with all that stuff in mind, right? So I'd like to think that beginning of early November, I reckon.
Yeah, again, I think Microsoft were pretty butthurt at the beginning of this generation. Sony did a very good job at stamping the boot down on Microsoft, and I think Microsoft really felt that, to be honest. So I think the early strategy was to have the most powerful machine, the cheapest machine, and to launch it first. I think that was some of the design goals. I'm not sure how many of those three. Well, they've certainly ticked one. I think it can't be argued it's not the most powerful, but whether it's going to be the cheapest and come out first, don't know.
Yeah, I mean, especially when we consider Sony's point of view as well. Like, they've been very quiet for the longest time. We hadn't heard anything until the Sony presentation back in early June, I believe it was. Or was it early July? I can't remember now. One of the two. But that was all we got, and that was great. We saw the PS5 reveal, but I think to compare them, like, we know nothing else about the PlayStation at all, and I can't even begin to think when that's going to be. I mean, obviously, I'd like to think that they will try to target a similar time because it's almost like they're both trying to compete against each other as to who's going to put their cards on the table first.
Well, this is probably a good time to talk about Sony predictions for August because Sony again are rumored to be delivering information through one means or another. We don't quite know what that method's going to be, whether it's going to be a showcase, which I doubt very much, or if it's just going to be trickling out information. I know there was I think there was a post earlier today, wasn't there, mentioning about I think is it the 6th of August? Sort of
yes,
state of play.
Yeah, 2 days time.
So what was mentioned in that? Because I know it was quite surprising.
From what I remember, I believe it said that there was not going to be any real PS5 information, and it's one of their. It's not necessarily a showcase. It's it's their state of play presentation. So I believe, in the way it sounds and from what they've done before, I expect this just to be almost like a PlayStation 4 showcase, effectively, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me at this stage in the game.
Well, considering they're kind of turning their back on the PlayStation 4 with the arrival of the new generation, it does seem odd, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about that comparison as well, I mean, we're talking a lot about Xbox and backwards compatibility, and just to finish that a little bit off, in how you can use your Xbox One controller on a Series X and vice versa. But now we've heard that yes, you can use your PlayStation 4 DualShock on a PlayStation 5, but only if you're playing PlayStation 4 games on it. Because they have this philosophy, don't they, that the next generation is the next generation. We don't want to be hindered by the previous stuff, and to get the best experience out of PlayStation 5 games, we want you to use our brand new controller, the DualSense. I can understand that. Obviously, it's a complete opposite way of working as compared to Microsoft and Xbox. I'm of mixed feelings of it. I'm not quite sure how to word it yet.
No, I completely agree. I know there was a lot of backlash on the internet around this because I think, there's a lot of Microsoft hate out there. People like to bash Microsoft, and some of it's deserved, to be fair. I think a lot of it's probably not deserved. You've obviously got trolls and people out there like to fuel the console war and stuff. But yeah. I think even some of the more hardcore PlayStation fans are seeing what's happening on the Xbox side of the fence and thinking, they might be putting negative spins on things, but in the back of their mind they're thinking, yeah, that's not a bad strategy, particularly around peripherals being fully backwards and forwards compatible. So you can use obviously your current Xbox 360 Xbox One controllers on the Series X, but you can also use the Series X controllers on your current Xbox One. I mean, that's quite a feat to be able to do that. I know, the Sony argument would be, well, we've got new technologies in our new controller, and we wouldn't want to inhibit game designers, and we wouldn't want people with a PlayStation 4 controller to necessarily miss out on these added features. But I'm not convinced that haptic feedback is an absolute game changer, in all honesty, and that in lots of games you're probably going to be able to turn that off anyway if you really wanted to. So it's not actually essential for the game. Yeah, it's just a little bit of anti-consumer, goodwill, I think, and I think that the internet have backlashed against that.
My comparisons also, again, I think you're right. A lot of this is about, we've got all these different haptic feedback sensors in the controller, so you can feel the game more in the environment. But to quickly, just to very, very quickly take this back to Nintendo quickly with this Nintendo Switch. I mean, their Joy-Con controllers had what they call the HD Rumble, which is effectively the super sensitive haptic feedback in those controllers. And they had their one game at launch, which kind of, I think it's called 1-2 Switch. It was almost like a tech demo type game, really, like a load of mini games. You get to sense the controller, and it was really good. But 3 years in, I have not played. I don't have any real recollection of playing any other game where developers made use of it, and even Nintendo themselves don't think have used it to much degree, apart from being a standard Rumble feature. So going back to PlayStation, with that controller now, I'd like to think that most developers will kind of not worry about it too much, or maybe know that most people don't care about it, I suppose.
No, I completely agree. And if you think back to the Xbox One generation, they had the rumble in the triggers. And that, a great demonstration of that was Forza 5, I believe. I think Forza 5 was the launch title for Xbox One. And you could actually feel the wheel spinning with your right trigger, and you could feel the ABS locking up with your left one if you brake too hard. And that was a really good little touch, and did actually allow you to sort of change your input to the game based on what you were feeling, and that was a really good thing. But to be honest, outside of that, I can't think of many, if any, third-party developers that actually use those, to that sort of degree.
And the other thing to add to that as well is that in terms of developers and developing games, like AAA titles now are no small feat to make, right? We've got teams of hundreds of people that just give us what we have now. I like to think, and my thoughts on a developer now thinking that, we've now got to add all this extra functionality for Rumble features, which are very specific to a controller. I mean, is it worth the effort? From a
Probably
development
not.
standpoint, I don't think it is.
So from a Sony fan's perspective, I think they feel like they're being strong-armed into buying a load of PS5 controllers, and there's there's an aspect of probably the Sony community that they're fine with that. They probably expect it because that's what Sony do, and not really question it. But I think there's a whole middle tier of gamer that possibly moved from Xbox to PlayStation in the last generation, thinking, you know what. We're not 100% loyal to Sony. This isn't, this is anti-consumer, and it doesn't have to be this way because Xbox have proven it doesn't have to be this way. So I think the Xbox ethos of being consumer friendly and the whole backwards compatibility thing is probably leaching into leaching into the gaming community, even without them realizing it is. And I even mean the Sony hardcore fans to a certain degree. And it's good to see.
I mean, I suppose the one I call it a positive, and I suppose it is a positive, is that what PlayStation have confirmed is that things like the PlayStation Move controllers, the wand controller things that you can use, and the PlayStation camera, I think, and peripherals like that, and I think PlayStation 4 headsets and things like that, or gaming headsets, are officially said to, you can use those on a PS5, which makes perfect sense. Why would you need to buy a new camera for? It's nothing more than a camera if you buy a PS5 one, right? But then I don't know, or I don't remember reading much about whether or not the PS5 supports PlayStation VR. So that's another interesting thing, I guess, because
that was mentioned. There was a list of stuff, and I believe, I think a line roughly was along the lines of that they will support peripherals, so third-party peripherals, and things like PSVR for select PS4 backwards compatible titles. So if you
concerning, isn't it?
Well, if your question is, will my PS4 PSVR work on my PS5? Knowing Sony, probably not, in all honesty. You probably will be able to play the PS4 backwards compat titles, but I think there might be a new PSVR headset coming, a year or two down the line, to be honest. And perhaps it needs it because, VR technology is a little bit behind. If you can up that refresh rate in the screens and make people feel less sick and disorientated, then it's probably needed, in all honesty.
Yeah, I mean, not want to touch on VR for too much, but like the Oculus Quest, I believe it's called, is the latest that you can get, and this is the completely wireless system now, isn't it? You charge up and you play, and I believe that's meant to be really good now.
You know what? I thought a little while ago, and I get the funny feeling that Microsoft and Facebook / Oculus might partner up because, I think Microsoft held off VR. I think they got their fingers burnt a little bit with Kinect because I think they saw the popularity of the Wii and motion controllers and went all in on the Kinect, assuming that was going to be the next big thing in gaming. And we know what happened to the Kinect. It was probably a great piece of hardware, but no one really wanted it. It wasn't needed or wanted by anyone. So I think Microsoft were a little bit cautious around VR, thinking that actually, do we really want to spend tens, if not hundreds of millions on R&D to get VR right if actually it's not going to be a thing? And to be honest, I'm not actually convinced VR still is a thing or that it's actually going to be mainstream. I don't think it's ever going to be mainstream. It's always going to be niche. But to that end,
it's a very weird space, isn't it?
I always thought that, because Microsoft have a part share in Facebook. And I know Facebook's had some bad press over the last few months. But I always thought that, as Facebook own Oculus, that if Microsoft could partner up with Facebook and actually get to use Oculus on an Xbox, they don't have any of that R&D cost. All they have to do is just make sure that the Oculus works with Xbox, bring some games to the platform, and then you're up and running. That would make sense to me.
Well, talking about Microsoft and Facebook, I mean, Mixer, that's now disappeared. And that now takes you straight to Facebook gaming. So that's one partnership there already. Yeah. So what you say there about, why waste our own time and effort developing a VR headset when this really good one from Oculus already exists? And hey, Facebook, do you mind can you make this work on our systems? If you're creating a deal in terms of removing your whole streaming service to then move to Facebook gaming, then even if people don't like it, people will jump to Facebook gaming people would choose to. I mean, out of those selections that don't. So yeah, I think that's a good point. Actually, I don't see it unforeseeable that maybe Microsoft could align with Facebook and Oculus to do that.
No, I agree. Well, we'll have to see on that one. That's been a rumor of mine. Well, a supposition of mine for quite a while now. But nothing's ever come of it. So it's still not impossible. It could still happen, but
That's
just have to wait and see on that front. So, so Sony, obviously, they haven't really shown their hand, particularly with price and cost, pre-orders and things like that. I know there was a rumor about a month ago now that the pre-orders were going to go live, and some YouTubers were streaming, and it never actually came to anything, which is quite funny to see.
Yeah.
So Sony are playing their cards close. I think Sony are very wary of Microsoft this time around. I think they are. I've never really seen Microsoft. It's either Sony are very wary of Microsoft, or Sony are very ultra confident and feel that they don't have to be worried about Microsoft. But I'm not really sure it is that, to be honest.
I mean, my take on it is, I think a couple of months ago there were not strong. I think there were quite weak rumors on the internet, but basically these were possible insider stories that the reason why the PlayStation 5 took so long to be revealed is because they were having performance issues. I think when it came out that the PlayStation 5 is technically a bit under-spec'd compared to the Series X, there was talk that Sony might have struggled and then trying to overclock their CPUs to basically meet the same power, but then at the same time having power and thermal issues, cooling the system down under load and having these rumors. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of, again, this is all weak rumors online, right? So who knows? But I mean, the PS4 had thermal issues, and I know Sony have said it's a very, very strong topic on their mind to get this right of the PS5. And I believe there's stories that they've heavily invested in cooling solutions for the PS5.
Yeah.
But then if they're heavily investing in that stuff, does that mean the rumors are true? Have they designed a system which is technically inferior to a competitor? And it's like, actually, to try and keep our fans and players to buy a PlayStation, we need this thing to work the same,
No, I agree. And apparently the PlayStation 5 has been in development longer than the Series X. And I think one of the issues that's dragged out the PlayStation 5 development, like you say, were perhaps thermal issues and how they were going to get this thing to work and not melt itself. I think Xbox have been very clever in their design.
I like the design. I think it's ingenious in a way to say, you know what, people don't necessarily need to have a really slimline box underneath their cabinet. We want something that works and does the job and is going to last you. I think is the key point.
No, I completely agree. Lots of people have a subwoofer plunked somewhere in their room. Lots of people have a smart speaker that, Alexa or Google Home and things like that. We're used to having these kind of devices plonked on the side somewhere, and if I think Xbox have tried to emulate what something like a big Alexa might look like, that kind of thing. Then we're used to that box being on the side of our TV cabinet or whatever. It doesn't always have to sit under, because I think that idea came from the old video cassette recorder days, doesn't it? Where you used to have your video under the TV or your Skybox under the TV.
Yeah,
I don't think that exists like that anymore, to be honest.
I mean, I myself, I don't have I suppose you'd call it a cable box or some sort of box you pay for. Because my partner and I, we just use streaming services now when we watch our content. We don't watch base TV, I suppose you'd call it, anymore. I don't think I do either.
TVs they're all smart TVs, so you don't even need a box to do that bit because they can get streamed to directly. So
mine's all built in, has everything I need.
So when do you think Sony might start showing their hand? Because surely it's got to be this month. They can't leave. Xbox and Sony can't leave it till September to tell us prices and pre-orders. Surely.
Yeah, I mean, given that this PlayStation State of Play announcement kind of came out the blue and it's only in 2 days' time, I think it got revealed is either yesterday or Sunday, I believe, wasn't it, when they said a State of Play is coming. So it's very short notice. So I'd like, as you say, I think going into September you're really stretching how late you can leave revealing price and release date. So I'd like to think that for PlayStation, near the end of August, similar to when Microsoft might do their one, maybe just after, they'll put another showcase in and say, this is where we're going to reveal the information.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, if you had to, who's gonna break first? Who do you think's gonna give their price first?
I think I would like to think Microsoft will do it first at their August presentation. And
I think Sony will.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do. I think Microsoft. I think they feel they've got the upper hand, and I know their July Games Showcase was farcical in lots of ways, and lots of people felt let down. But they think that they're buzzing from the confidence around their box. So I really think they're going to hold out for Sony to go first.
I base my prediction on how confident they've been. I mean, back in January, we talked about this in the last stream as well, where YouTubers such as Austin Evans and I think Digital Foundry as well got their own hands on with the system, and we even saw what the insides looked like. I mean, that's never really been done before. And how confident must you be in your design to say, you know what, we're going to get some popular tech YouTubers on. Look, make a video, show it off to the world, to all your fans. To me, I think if you're that confident in your design to reveal it like that, then I'd like to think that I think they would have waited. I think they have waited to see if PlayStation did reveal theirs, of which they haven't yet, as we know. So now I'd like to think that maybe they're going to bite the bullet first and say, you know what, we're confident in our design, we're confident in their community. We're going to this is it. We're going to try and undercut.
You see, the problem I have with that is I think Microsoft are actually quite fluid in their price. I actually think they are possibly willing to make a little bit of a loss on a Series X as well, despite what I said earlier, just to undercut Sony. Because, if you think about the mantras that I was talking about, so being the most powerful, being the cheapest and releasing first, they've got the most powerful one, but they can't be the cheapest until they know what Sony's doing. And I think that's why they're holding out. And I think Sony at some point are going to lose their nerve and just have to go for it, because I think Sony are they know they've got some disappointing news to deliver, because I think the PS5, the top one's going to be $500, and I think the Series X, I think the Series X will either be the same or $480 or something. I can't see the PS5 being any less than £500. Maybe £480, maybe. But given what we're seeing from it, and the size of the unit, all the R&D that's gone into the PS5, and all the other stuff that we've seen about the thermal solutions, etc., and the SSD, it's got to be cheap. It's not cheap, is it?
The proprietary SSD is, it's great, but as you say, like that costs money. They need to get that reimbursement back. So
absolutely. Okay, so that's interesting. So you think Microsoft are going to go first? I think Sony will go first with the price. What I do also think, though, and this is not many people have mentioned this, is that I absolutely think Microsoft needs to go first with their pre-orders. Now, you might think, well, how can they go first with their pre-orders until the price is announced? But these sort of things have happened. You can actually put a placeholder payment in place and get your name in the queue, or get in the line, as it were, for this device. And then obviously you just you probably pay a fairly small deposit to hold your position, and then when the price is revealed, you just literally pay the rest. So I think with regards to the Xbox or Microsoft mantras, be launching first, I think they might also be along the lines of pre-order as well, because if Sony pre-order first, let's say Sony announced tomorrow on Thursday on the 6th that actually, PS5 is £500 and you can pre-order from midnight tonight. Well, all of a sudden, Microsoft are thinking, we've missed the boat a little bit, because, lots of PlayStation fans out there, the diehards that are going to buy one anyway, they're going to order all of those systems. But there might be a few people that are sitting on the fence thinking, do I want to wait? Do I want to get my name in the queue? Do I want to, potentially miss out not getting a PlayStation 5? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've heard stories on Twitter and stuff recently that people are saying that, or analysts are saying that they think the PS5 is going to sell out before everyone can get one. But then, I've also seen Twitter polls. These are just like random things, right? Where like people with a relatively high following do their own polls on, which one are you going to buy? And I think I saw quite a few, which is basically leaning towards the PS5. Most people, I think it's like 65 to 70% of people that did these polls answered that, yes, I'm getting a PS5. I think it's very easy to say that now, mainly because if you're again back to trolling and all that kind of stuff, people just want to throw hate because they didn't like the Microsoft presentation or whatever. But then I think people will definitely change their tune once the prices are revealed. And I can't see, in my own mind, I'd like to think there are some PlayStation exclusive titles which were shown at the June or July showcase, which I'd like to play, and maybe that's a reason for me to get a PS5. But I say that now, but if I see the price of £500 coming up on there and no real scheme in terms of paying monthly or whatever available, I'm going to severely think about not getting one because, I can't afford to get both necessarily, just like most people can't. So I'm not sure.
No, it's like you say, we've never been in this situation. There's lots of pundits out there, us included, trying to second guess what the hell's going to go on with these companies. They're big enterprise companies. They know what they're doing. It's just, as a consumer, I just feel like I'm on the receiving end of some sort of, I don't know, some untoward business tactics. I understand, the last man standing or first to blink, but ultimately it feels like we're the ones suffering, in all honesty, because it's our money, it's hard-earned money. Both companies don't deserve a penny of our money until they can prove otherwise. And it's hard-earned money that, particularly, like I say, with parents and children, it's not so bad if you're a hardcore gamer and you're going to get both systems or whatever day one if you're able to. But people that do have a genuine choice, for their children, let's say they've got 2 children. Do they buy one PlayStation 5 or do they buy 2 Xbox Series S's that come to the same price? Do you know what I mean? Just things like that.
I mean, for me, it just made me think about something else in that I think it's very easy in the way the world is today. I mean, there's thousands of streamers that stream all sorts of content and, that are popular or they're trying to build their followings, and that's great. And the same with things like YouTube. So I think it's quite easy for these companies to probably be phased in that a lot of their player base are, top end gamers or, people in their 20s onwards, adults basically, who are feeding into this. But then I think the large majority of these companies' sales come from I was going to say unsung heroes, but effectively the people who aren't streamers, the everyday person who comes home from work or school or university or whatever, and they just want to play their game. They don't care about streaming. They want to do that kind of content. And I think the large majority of people is your everyday person, right? So
yeah, no, absolutely.
I am wondering if some of these companies are kind of getting into the mindset of, most of our players are right into streaming and watching content online. And actually, I don't think they are. As you say, most people are probably young kids, even if they are tech savvy, may not keep up with it. And they just want to play a game. They don't care about everything else. But I think these companies need to realize that most of your player base aren't people who care about YouTube or streamers and stuff. And actually, they're just an everyday person that just wants to come home and chill and play a game.
I think Microsoft perhaps have grasped that, in all honesty. Hence the Series S and hence All Access. But so one last prediction then from you on this Sony section. So do you think Sony or PlayStation 5 will launch before or after Series X?
So in my mind for Xbox, I'm thinking around November 5th in terms of their release. That's kind of the number I'm thinking of. For PlayStation, I think they will either try to undercut about, say, like August 31st-ish kind of time, or maybe just after. So like maybe November.
August 31st.
Sorry, September. September. So
September? Blimey.
Hold on.
Okay. No, October. You mean October.
October 31st. I'll start again. Okay. Or November 8th to November 12th. That's what I meant to say, sorry.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's a very similar time because, my sort of prediction is I think Sony are going to announce the price first, but they will actually launch slightly later, probably a week or 2 later, which would obviously play completely into Microsoft's hands because that would then tick all 3 of their mantras. Because if Sony go first with a price, Microsoft can come in and either undercut them or at least match their cost, knowing that they've got a more powerful machine. And I also think Microsoft really want to launch before PlayStation. And I think that will then tick all 3 of the Series X boxes, as it were, from a design perspective, and really put to bed what happened in 2013 with the launch of the Xbox One, in all honesty. I really do think that it plays on their minds that much. Particularly Phil Spencer, because he was around at the time. That wouldn't have been comfortable times in Microsoft. Don Matrick had to leave; he had no choice, and Phil Spencer stepped up to the plate. And myself included, if I'd been Phil Spencer, the first thing I'd have done was, right, what the hell did we get wrong? Let's never do that again.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. I mean, I remember watching. I mean, I was Team Xbox since the 360, but so coming to that presentation back in 2013, well, before 2013, about 2012, I think it was, and seeing that, it was almost like, oh my God, is this really what we're jumping into next? And yeah, so I think you're right there. In they want to sell this. This isn't a multimedia machine as what they sold the Xbox One as being. This
No.
is a true and told gaming machine, but it does have that functionality should you wish to want to use it.
No, I'll tell you what, I don't even know. Does it have a DV, an HDMI in? I'm not sure it does it?
No, I don't think it does. In terms of the TV stuff, I believe that's all scrapped, as I think it should
good. Yeah, they've completely moved away from that. And Sony were absolutely right to hold their guns with that. I mean, they never wavered from the fact that it was a games console that played games for gamers.
Yeah.
I think Microsoft were desperate to break into the living room at that point. And unfortunately, I think they saw the Xbox as being the box to break into the living room and actually being the device that everyone wanted and absolutely needed. But that wasn't going to satisfy the gamers because they just wanted a games machine.
Yeah, and again, back then it was about selling the use of TV services and being able to record TV on your Xbox, which, yeah, they may have thought was revolutionary, but look where we are now. I mean,
well, a bit like Connect, it was a service no one wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
Or needed.
And again, like I mean, I know obviously a vast majority of people still watch standard television, but equally, a vast majority of people also now don't at all, myself included. I'm in that percentage of people who watch 0% of TV now in terms of aired television.
Yeah, no, me too.
So I think ditching it is the best thing, right? I just want a gaming machine.
The same with Connect. They've obviously ditched the whole Connect thing, and that absolutely had to happen. Had they not have ditched it, then there'd be a lot of people questioning Microsoft's stance on what the Series X means. But thankfully, they've ditched it, and I think people have got confidence now that this is, first and foremost a gaming machine for hardcore gamers, or even the casual gamers, but not with any gimmicks.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Connect Sports, was it? I think it was called.
Yeah,
that was quite fun. It was good to use, as you say, trying to sell off the Wii. You mentioned it earlier, and the motion control fad. But yeah, I mean, who cared?
I agree. Yeah, exactly.
I know a lot of use where it did have was actually outside of gaming. I think a lot of tech enthusiasts and tinkerers and stuff, and ended up using it for their own like motion capture devices and things like that. So
absolutely. I mean, the second generation Connect, it could tell your blood pressure, I believe. It really was that advanced. It was bizarre because they had a fitness program at first, didn't they? And you could stand in front of it and it could literally look and see what your blood pressure was, or your blood flow and things like that. It was really impressive. Yeah. But again, gamers don't want that. as was proven.
I think the last thing you want to do when you turn on your Xbox is check your blood pressure.
Yeah, you don't want to be reminded of that if you can help it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you think Microsoft are going to go first with launching the price, and both are going to launch at a similar time?
Yep.
I think Sony will go first, and I think Sony will launch after. So it'll be interesting. It'd be interesting to see which way round it is. Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, final topic for the day. Basically, just any sort of new Xbox games that are coming around. I've got a list. I saw some things that had arrived on Game Pass. When was that? Yesterday, I believe, if not the day before. As you said earlier, the Tourist's on there. I checked it out. I had a quick look in the video. Oh, just as a side note, the new Microsoft Store is inbound. I know people on the Xbox Insider dashboard updates will be getting to see it early.
Yeah, I read about this.
Yeah, apparently it's at least twice as fast as the current system. And the reason I bring it up actually is because I had to travel to the Xbox Store. So I saw that the Tourist was on Game Pass, and I didn't really know what it was. In all honesty, it's not a game that I was aware of. And you actually have to travel to the Microsoft Store to see any videos or information on it, because from the Game Pass screen, all you can do is install, I believe. So I traveled to the Microsoft Store and saw the video of it and thought, wow, this is actually a game that I quite liked, actually. It sort of reminded me a little bit of Minecraft and was quite blocky. You said that you've been aware of this for a little while.
Yeah, I was aware of the game. I think I saw it quite a while back when I was quite a few months ago now when I was browsing the Nintendo Switch eShop store.
So it's not a new game then?
It's not new in that it's brand new. It's been out for a couple of months on other platforms, but I think obviously it's new to Game Pass.
Yeah.
And yeah, I jumped in, and so far I'm intrigued by it to keep playing it.
So what do you do? What kind of game is it? I don't understand. I couldn't really tell from the video. It's one thing, I'm watching the video and I'm thinking he's not actually doing anything in the video. I don't know what this game's about. Is it a puzzle solver or?
So this is the interesting thing I found about it. So it's like a 3D platformer in terms of you're moving around a 3D space and you're doing stuff, but you keep going to these little islands, almost like in a Greek resort or something, or like Ibiza and all these different islands and that kind of stuff. But it's quite weird. The game, well, like we said about Grounded at the very beginning of this stream, that it doesn't really give you a tutorial and it just throws you in there. The beginning of The Tourist is very much the same. Like you're on like some boat with some guy and he brings you to an island and you get off and he kind of says to you to have a look around and that's it. And you just start walking around and talking to people and figuring it out. And then think very quickly on the starting island, there's like this, you kind of have to, you go around and collect some coins or whatever they are. And then you kind of learn how to climb or grab onto ledges. And then there's like this monument that you climb into, and then there's like this ancient kind of technology or these ancient beings which control these weird machines inside of these monuments. And then when you get past the puzzles and defeat it or whatever, you then get like this glowing orb thing, or a core, I think it's called. And then out of nowhere, the old guy that you spoke to at the beginning kind of appears before you and says, "Oh, you need to go to the other islands and collect more."
No, one of those sort of games.
But it doesn't. So there is a story, but it doesn't really tell you what it is. So this is what I mean. I'm intrigued by it, but I don't know whether I like it or not.
Okay, well, I've got it downloaded, so I'm gonna check it out. We had FIFA F1 2019 as well arrive. I quite like driving games, but without a wheel, particularly Formula One games, without a wheel and pedals, it's a difficult game to master.
It's experience, isn't it?
We've got Yakuza Kiwami 2. I've never really got into the Yakuzas, to be honest.
No, I know some people that absolutely love them. But yeah, I'm the same. Maybe I should jump into it. I mean, I can now. Again, it's on Game Pass. Great service.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same. You know, I think we've got 3 Yakuzas on there now, I believe. Yeah. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I got another one called Nowhere Profit. I don't know if you've seen that. I think it looks like a turn-based sort of tactical thing. Again, you know, everything I know about the game I saw on a sort of a 30-second video in the Microsoft Store, unfortunately. So
yeah, turn-based stuff isn't really. I mean, I'll say I played Paper Mario, but I enjoyed that for the story content. It's not really heavy on the turn-based battling. It's not what the game's about. But a lot of games which say they are turn-based are very heavy in that this is much of the game loop. You know, you are in these turn-based battles a lot of the time, and for me, they're not. They just don't really stick with me personally.
No, me neither. You know, you're either a turn-based kind of player or you're not really, and that's certainly not me. And obviously, the last one was Grounded, which we've got currently playing on here. I don't know if have you seen the spiders?
I've seen them. Quite scary looking things up close.
They are.
Stink bug things, isn't there, that come up to you?
Yeah, there's some stink bugs and obviously ladybugs, ladybirds. Yeah, it's an interesting game. I do like it. I just hope people don't burn themselves out on it before it actually gets a full launch. I got the funny feeling people are going to just burn themselves out because I don't, being a game preview, I just don't think there's quite enough content there to keep everyone happy until release. If via the game preview, Obsidian release more and more content, then brilliant. Perhaps it will keep people's interest. But I feel like I've seen 90% of the game already, to be honest. And there's a good few months left to go until it launches properly. But
I'm still going to jump into Ground. I have it installed and stuff, and I think it's also cross-play, so I can play Xbox games such as yourself.
Well, it sounds like Microsoft, looking at, if it's second in the global charts in Steam, it sounds like Microsoft have already made a bucket full of cash out of this thing already. So
I have a preview game. It's quite fascinating, isn't it?
I just hope that it doesn't actually detract from things like Avowed. I'd hate for some of the attention to be taken from that game and put onto this because it's a money spinner.
I'd like to think that's not the case. I think a lot of people are wanting for a like Elder Scrolls Skyrim-esque experience,
Yeah.
which isn't really around at the minute. I mean, I'm not counting Elder Scrolls Online here. I'm talking about your core single-player experience, and I think Avowed is very much that game to fill that gap, isn't it?
I think Bethesda have to watch their back. I think Avowed could be a Skyrim killer or an Elder Scrolls killer to a certain degree, particularly if they get it wrong. Bethesda aren't in everyone's good books at the moment. Not particularly consumer friendly. If they get the next Elder Scrolls wrong, then that's left the door open for Avowed, because, like you say, we went an entire generation without a new Elder Scrolls game. It seems like Avowed might be the new kid on the block.
Yeah, and again, talking about the bad blood with people and Bethesda. I mean, if we very quickly talking about Fallout 76. I mean that I don't think we could deem that a big success in the community's eyes. I don't necessarily, from what I've seen and read about it. I know a lot of people do enjoy the game, but I know there was a lot of hate around when they brought. I think it was like a subscription service for the game, but it was like some ludicrous cost per month you had to pay. I think it was equivalent for like a year's subscription a month or something. It was like £30 a month or something for the game. I think it was quite expensive for what it was. And I remember they got a lot of hate. So I think things like that as well don't help put Bethesda in people's good books.
It's quite strange. I mean, I can think of, off the top of my head, 2 examples where games launched in a very, were probably, the marketing far outweighed the actual game. And one of those games was No Man's Sky, when obviously it first launched on the PlayStation. And the same for Fallout 76. The name alone, Fallout got everyone excited. And to be honest, I think Elder Scrolls Online sees, quite a lot of success. So I think, everyone just assumed that Fallout 76 was going to follow in an Elder Scrolls Online's footsteps. And both games, took very different directions, as in No Man's Sky, because, they realized that they didn't deliver on the promise, and they have worked absolutely tirelessly to turn that game around. It's on every platform now. There's umpteen updates. It's not the same game that launched.
Yeah, I've read it. It's completely transformed now, isn't it? Apparently, it's now a decent game. Is
exactly
what I read in here.
Now, by comparison, obviously, Fallout 76 and Bethesda, they have literally made every single wrong turn they could. If there was a fork in the road, they took the wrong one every single time. And it just astounds me that a company that's so big can get things so wrong. And I'm a little bit worried that Microsoft are in their own little bubble. I mentioned this on the last podcast, that these companies get so big that they get caught up in their own hype bubble and just lose touch of reality and what gamers are all about, how the community feels at any given time. And I think that's what went wrong with the Microsoft July showcase, in all honesty. I think they were just caught up in their own hype a little bit and didn't quite understand the reality of the situation. And I think, Bethesda with Fallout 76 caught in exactly the same trap, to be honest.
This is the kind of thing we've seen time and time again, isn't it? I mean, we saw this with, from the 360 to the Xbox One. We saw it from the PlayStation 2 to the PlayStation 3 when, Sony thought that everyone would buy a PS3, even if it was delayed after 6 months. And it turned out to completely have a severe impact in their sales. The 360, I think it's sold in the September. The PS3 didn't get released until the March the next year, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So I think there seems to be this constant back and forth between the main two of, we've had a really good successful generation. The next one's going to be bigger and better. But then, as you say, they each seem to get overconfident in their own stances. So
yeah, it's complacency, isn't it? Like you say, when you've won the generation. And I'm not convinced the 360 won the generation. I think it did early on. I know the PlayStation 3 certainly caught up by the end. We glitch on this bit here as well. Look, we get stuck in this leaf. Yeah, I think the PlayStation 3 caught up in terms of sales, but I think with regards game development and goodwill from developers, the Xbox 360 certainly won out. It certainly didn't have the same kind of processor. It didn't have the cell processor that the PlayStation 3 did. It was just such an absolute pig to code for that no one really leveraged it to the full potential, other than perhaps first-party titles. But so what other games have we got going on? We've got Flight Sim. Flight Sim's been out on pre-release again, I believe, on PC. It's getting it looks fantastic, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've got some text in front of me here. So I believe it's coming to PC on Game Pass August 18th.
Oh,
is the date for it. So yeah,
That's
Flight
interesting.
Sim for PC, August 18th on Game Pass.
Oh, so it's not already out on Game Pass because it's being sold on Steam. Sorry. So
Okay. Well, again, this is obviously, I think Game Pass is slightly. Oh no, sorry, I was going to say it's slightly different, but at the same time, it's Microsoft Flight Sim is the name. So
yeah.
I've just shot myself in the foot there. Yeah, why is it not on Game Pass already? I don't know, but yeah, August 18th is the apparent date I have in front of me here.
Do you mean for PC or for Xbox? Because I know it's not out on Xbox at the moment.
No, this is for PC. So August 18th.
That's interesting. I didn't realise.
That's what I've got in front of me here, at least. Yeah, this is again, it's not really a game specifically, is it? It is a flight sim. I think a lot of aerospace industry companies use this kind of stuff as well to train pilots and stuff. But looking at it as from a game perspective, I mean, it looks phenomenal, right? I mean, we're talking HDR, ray tracing, flight all the way around the world, got detailed maps. I mean, if you're into your planes, I think you're covered on all sorts of small cruiser and big airliners.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that Microsoft have partnered up with some sort of third-party aircraft designers, not actual aircraft designers, but software, So there's some smaller companies that obviously make some planes and stuff, things like Concorde and stuff that you can buy. And I'm hoping and thinking that that's probably going to come to Series X as well, console, where you can actually sort of download and buy a plane from a third party and install it in your game. But it looks amazing. I mean, I'd love to see it running on Series X. I mean, some of the footage that I have seen, I mean, they must be pretty damn spectacular PCs. And I know Digital Foundry have done a bit of a deep dive on Flight Sim, and everyone seems to be very praiseworthy of it. Is it a game? No, not in the. We mentioned this in the last podcast. I mean, probably not a game in the terms that most people think of a game, but it's in the game realm, I suppose.
I think a gamer could try it out and quite possibly enjoy it. I think the point there, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a number of simulators, isn't there, in the game? We've got train simulator, bus simulator, farm. There's lots of those sort of things. I mean, I guess those sort of games tend to have a little bit more of a sort of a jovial element to them, whereas Flight Simulator is a very straight-laced, this is how you're going to fly a plane kind of thing.
Another interesting thing I have read about this game is that, believe it or not, I've read that it's actually having a physical PC release as well. And like old school, because of the amount of data on it, almost like an old school PlayStation 1 game, I believe it's spread over 6 discs.
I heard it was 10 discs.
Oh, is it 10? It could be more than. But that's mad, right?
Yeah. Again, there's several different versions. I believe that, you get the ultimate one with all of the bells and whistles, and then I think there's about 3 or 4 sort of tiers of the game. And I'm guessing depending on which one you buy, depends on how many DVDs that it comes on. But yeah, I mean, you'd need. Well, imagine the download on Series X. God, that's going to be something, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think this thing's I think the rumored to be about 150 gig or something, isn't it? In space, it's because it's got all of this real-time simulation data as part of it. It's not just game physics. We're talking replicated real-time, real physics, aren't we here, I believe?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the visuals are streamed in as well. So I guess that eases slightly. I mean, you think about it, I think Call of Duty Modern Warfare currently is around 200 gigabytes. I mean, it's huge. So I can't believe a Call of Duty game is actually bigger than Flight Simulator. That would be something, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about that shortly if you want to, but on Flight Sim, I'm sitting there thinking, like, part of me was thinking it's quite cool to see a box version, but why would they do that? And then from what I just said a minute ago, like, a lot of insider industry aerospace types use this for training purposes. So it makes complete sense to buy this as a disc rather than expecting these people to download copies every time.
Yeah,
150 is a lot for
that makes sense. And I can see this making a load of money for Microsoft. They're in such a great position, I think, at the moment, despite the hiccups that they've had, particularly around the sort of this game showcase and Halo and things like that. If you focus on those little sort of things, then you could paint a very bleak picture, couldn't you? But when you actually think about the popularity of Game Pass, Grounded, Sea of Thieves, Flight Simulator, there's so much going on in Microsoft under the Xbox banner that the future is very bright for Microsoft, without a doubt. It's the most exciting time to be an Xbox fan ever. to be honest. I think
100%. Yeah, I'm super hyped with where Xbox is going. I mean, again with the PlayStation stuff, I've seen it, I enjoyed it, but I don't know. There's something about what Xbox is doing this coming generation, which is it's just got me super hyped, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do in the future.
It almost feels like Sony are sort of caught in the generational loop, and to be honest, it's what they know, and they were probably the ones that really mastered it, in all honesty, because before those, in the Nintendo and Sega days, it kind of existed, but you'd never have a Sega Mega Drive 1, a Sega Mega Drive 2, a Sega Mega Drive 3. It wouldn't happen. But the PlayStation were the ones that bought PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3. They kind of invented this thing. And I think Microsoft are trying to break out of that because they can. And again, like we mentioned earlier, because of the Azure servers and really taking gaming to a level that not everyone expected and not everyone thinks they want at the moment. But I think it will get to a point where you'd never go back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this is all part of, we're talking about, again, bringing up
the
troll.
Evolution of gaming.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of companies say this, don't they? That people don't know what they want until they see it. Or don't know what they don't like until they try it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of people, especially the ones that kind of hate on a lot of this stuff, I think once they actually get their hands on it, I think a lot of people will begin to like it. But then at the same time, how much choice do we have? I know as consumers and as part of the community, we have some influence in terms of our collective voices. But at the same time, these companies have, they know things that all of us could ever dream of knowing, from a technical standpoint, in terms of trade secrets and new tech on the block and all this kind of stuff. So who knows what we're going to get in the next couple of years' time?
No, exactly. I'm just hoping that Microsoft show their hand with regards to their strategy going forward at some point. But if I'm right around the all access and a mid-generation upgrade, they're certainly not going to mention that for a very long time yet, because they obviously need to get Series X sold and out there as a brand and comfortable with people. They certainly don't want everyone to think, actually in 2 years this is going to be out of date, because that's not really the case, to be honest. It wouldn't be the very latest, but it would still be very current. So XCloud, September the 15th. It's going official as part of the Game Pass Ultimate Bundle. Like you said earlier, gold seems to be on its last legs. I don't really know the strategy, to be honest, because what part of me sort of thinks, well, they've bundled XCloud in with Game Pass Ultimate, which also happens to have gold. It's quite a clever strategy, actually, because someone in let's say Japan, would they want to pay for Game Pass and gold? No. So they've rolled it all into one. Does that mean that they can probably drop gold altogether? I think it kind of does mean that they can do that. It's just whether they want to or not.
I think dropping gold is, yes, it paid for the services way back when online gaming and Xbox Live was brand new, and all these to run these brand new stuff is obviously expensive, right, from a company perspective. But as we're not going to go over it again. We've already spoken about it. But with things like Game Pass and all these services, and Xbox now becoming a service rather than just a box and a platform, I think it has plenty of other revenue streams now to recoup that cost back. So
absolutely,
making it gold. Also, actually, this also reminds me of. I know we're nearing the end of the stream. I won't get into this for too much, but so there was news that Halo is going free to play in terms of its multiplayer. But then whether or not they reveal that in the Xbox August show, and maybe at that point also reveal that it's free to play because Xbox Live is now free.
That would be a hell of an announcement, wouldn't it? And to be honest, I hadn't really considered that. So let's not go over the Halo hate and what happened there, but. They always say, there's no such thing as bad press, and everyone's still talking about the Microsoft brand, even if it's in a negative way. Halo has certainly drawn a lot of attention and memes and stuff, and Microsoft are quite good-natured and taken that in their stride and turned it to their own advantage in lots of ways. But we had some more Halo news come out. So the fact that it's going to be free to play multiplayer makes me wonder if there's going to be a battle royale element.
I believe there was a Japanese website which categorized it as a battle royale shooter or something like that.
Okay.
So again, I think there's also rumors that the Halo Infinite world is going to be more open world as opposed to like level based structure. So does it fit a battle royale setting? If that's true, yeah, I guess it does. If it's an open world game and you have multiplayer and battle royale is now a thing as a genre on its own, why not? I think people are going to hate on it, right? But it will sell because people love Halo.
Yeah, I agree. You're right. It's quite divisive. The haters will hate it regardless, and the people that love it will love it kind of regardless almost. It's the middle crowd, isn't it, that really need to buy into this, because that's where the profits are, and the majority of people, to be honest. I was actually more surprised by the 120 frames a second, if I'm honest. I know they. Yeah, well, exactly. I know they got apparently they got Gears 5 running at 120 frames a second on multiplayer. But essentially, that's still a sort of a current gen game. Now, obviously, we saw the graphical fidelity of Halo, and it didn't massively impress. And lots of people would sort of think, well, yeah, I'd want that running at 120 frames a second, if nothing else. But it's nice to know that it's in the mix, because that they didn't have to do that. And it makes me wonder, when they say 120 frames a second, are we talking actually it's going to be between 100 and 110, 120, or are we talking a locked 120? Because lots of 60 frames per second games aren't actually 60 frames. They go anything between 50 and 60, if that. So
yeah, I can't imagine this being absolutely locked. And I mean, in the early days, in terms of a PC world, 120 from a high-end gaming point of view on PC, that's now like the norm, right? I don't have a rig which can support that, but in time I surely will. But so it kind of makes sense that in time consoles can do that. But will it be stable at the launch? I don't expect it to, not at least with some graphical compromise or technical compromises elsewhere.
No, I agree. And even if they have to lower the resolution to sort of some sort of checkerboarding or some solution like that, or even bump it down to a fixed 1440. But yeah, it's about options. I think it should be about options. And if we as gamers have got the option to play at 120 with a lower resolution, or the full glorious 4K at 60, then give us the option. The only thing that does make me wonder is if we would have a massive advantage on the multiplayer, because if I'm playing at 120 frames a second and someone else is playing at 60, do I have an advantage? I guess I do. Would it be a massively noticeable advantage? Probably not, in all honesty.
It's the current argument even now, isn't it, about people like myself on my PC, where I'm running at 60 frames most of the time. Most console users obviously run at 60. Other PC players. I'm talking for games like, say, Call of Duty here, right? So a lot of people also run that at 120. I don't know. I feel like I'm running at 60 frames, and I seem to do relatively well still. So I don't feel like I'm a bad player, and I feel like I do well most of the time, at least in that game. Not to blow my own trumpet here or anything, but I don't consider myself a bad player in that game.
Yeah, not agree.
Okay, I'm running at 60. So is it a disadvantage? Maybe it is, but I equally don't think it's as big as a disadvantage as what people think it is. I think just by playing a numbers game, they think, oh, that's double the difference, so therefore they're going to be twice as quick or better, which that's not the case in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we're not going to know until it's here, and we can all play 120 frames a second en masse, because on PC it's a massively variable platform anyway. So talking of Call of Duty, this is the last sort of topic. Where the hell is Call of Duty? What's going on with that?
The current one or the new one?
Well, the new one, the new one. What's it called? Black Ops. What is it called?
Black Ops Cold War, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Black Ops Cold War. Now, the one thing that was interesting that I picked up on about the Sony State of Play is they said they were going to talk about third-party games. So I am fully expecting Sony to announce, in conjunction perhaps with Activision, the next Call of Duty on Thursday. That's
a very good shout, actually. Yeah, I hadn't considered that before. I thought maybe it would just be like one-off PS4 titles, and then maybe throw in this will also be on PS5 maybe into the mix. But no, that's a good point, actually. It's a perfect time to announce it.
Well, again, Call of Duty's never been this late before it's been announced. All of these sort of industries, particularly in this sector, everything seems to have been delayed. But the strange thing is the thing that's actually delayed, it's not the end product itself, because I still fully believe we're going to get PlayStation 5 and Series X in November. But what is delayed is the information about it. And that seems to me to be the easy thing. It seems strange that that these companies are holding out just on the information. And I can't really imagine why. But yeah, it's a bizarre one.
This is that reminds me of another article I read the other day, not to sidetrack from wanting to talk about Call of Duty, but about people were saying for a number of years now that, is E3 still the main show we should have? Should we ditch E3 and should we just have individual showcases? And obviously this year, due to the current world climate, it did get cancelled. And I think a lot of people, myself included, can see that actually E3 is 100% needed, and it's in the calendar for, I think, in most all big gamers out there, that is the one event. If you don't watch any other gaming event of the year, E3 is the one that everyone puts their eyes to. But it's not just watching trailers from a consumer perspective. It's also where you get journalists that get to go to the show, review the demos, and actually report on these games properly. And that's where all the information comes from. So just getting these kind of virtual showcases, whilst good for us, at the same time, because people can't get their hands on it, there's such a lack of information, which is, I think
No, I completely agree. And I think lots of people were getting sick and tired of E3. And so, this year when obviously the world events happened, when E3 was kind of essentially cancelled, I think a lot of people thought, well, it was coming to its end anyway. I don't think it will be any great loss. But I would also think now that a lot of those people that thought that are actually desperate for E3, because this is, as a consumer, this is bloody torturous waiting for this information. And it did, it at least gave everyone a start and a finish line. We all knew who was going to be at E3. I know Sony haven't been at E3 for a few years, but they were still always going to, Microsoft were going to show their hand. So Sony felt comfortable showing their hand. And we'd never really been in this cat and mouse situation before about who's going to blink first, because, there were always dates in the diary when information was going to get shared. But the silly thing is, there's going to be a Microsoft announcement in August. And it's now, I believe, what date is it? 4th of August?
4th today, yeah.
And we still don't even know when that's going to be, what day that's going to be. We don't even know what format it's going to take. And it's just painful as a consumer and someone that's excited about this product. And, I don't mind admitting I'm excited about it, because it is an exciting time, and it is going to cost me the best part of £500, I should think. So, I feel like I have every right to be excited and buy into it. But I don't also want to be kept at arm's length with the information, because I know Microsoft must know all of this information by now. This isn't, information they're still gathering. They know all of this. It's just that they're not sharing it. And that's the painful bit for me as a consumer, to be honest.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And again, this is where E3 shines, isn't it? It's almost like that calendar date where, E3 is happening, and it's almost like a timeline for all the developers and, again, the main competitors out there to say, you need to have your stuff ready to showcase here. This is when all of the world's gaming eyes are on you. Show them what you've got coming. And as I say, I'm a Nintendo fan as well as obviously Xbox. And usually that's the big time we get Nintendo news as well on their exclusive content. But we've had no announcements, I think, since because they do theirs through what they call a Nintendo Direct. And I think the last official one was in September last year. We've not had like a proper one. We've had a few mini ones here and there, but in terms of first party titles, there hasn't been one since September. Like, we're talking almost a year ago. And the Nintendo scene at the minute is dead because there was no E3. We've got a few third party titles or the rest of it, but I want to know the first party stuff, and E3 gave me that. And this is another thing why, for me, E3 is a necessity in the gaming world, because you need to have that stage where you can get all that information collated together and reveal it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And in fact, you reminded me of a meme that I saw the other day. Something along the lines of all Xbox fans hate Sony, Sony fans hate Xbox, and Nintendo fans hate Nintendo.
That's right, though, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I could kind of see that, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I can feel that way sometimes too.
Yeah. So Call of Duty. So we think it's obviously coming this year. I don't think it's going to be delayed. I mean, it's normally a November release. There was part of me thinking, I think Microsoft may have actually bought back the sort of franchise and the marketing partnership with Activision and Call of Duty, but I sadly don't think that's the case anymore. I think Sony have probably retained that. Is it a system seller? You know what? Actually, I think it might be, because I think a lot of YouTubers, particularly Call of Duty ones, I've noticed a lot of them play on PlayStation 4, probably PlayStation 4 Pro. A few of them play on the One X. But I think at the beginning of the generation, with obviously the mistakes Microsoft made and the fact that they were going to get their content early on the PlayStation, a lot of YouTubers jumped ship to Sony, and then they're obviously not just YouTubers, they're influencers as well. People seeing this stuff being played on the PlayStation brand, particularly maps and weapons and stuff that the PlayStation guys were enjoying more so than the Xbox ones, and early releases of certain map packs and stuff.
I think that's a joint incentive between Sony and being an influencer / streamer, isn't it? Because if you, as a streamer / influencer, especially if you're still quite young and you want to grow, you need to show that content off, right? And I suppose if the only way to do that is on an exclusive platform, then you should do that. That's probably why, as you said, there's probably minimal amounts on Xbox, because, well, again, especially if they're smaller YouTubers that can't or influencers that can't afford a second console, then it's obviously all they've stuck with. But yeah, 100% leans into Sony's favour.
The strange thing about Call of Duty, though, is I thought that Activision were actually trying to move away slightly from the sort of the preferred marketing platform holder, because I think Modern Warfare was quite even actually between PlayStation and Xbox. I'm not aware of any advantages that PlayStation had actually in Modern Warfare. Are you aware of any?
I think the only thing that the PlayStation had in terms of the exclusives was, I think, some exclusive Spec Ops modes. At least,
yes, that's right. They did, didn't they?
Yeah, and then the rest of us will get it. Outside of that, I don't think there was much else really.
No, you're right, and and that's considering when that first when this first launched, I think the PlayStation marketing meant that they were getting the map pack DLCs about a month earlier than the Xbox, and that's quite a big deal. So to go from that to they get Spec Ops for, I think, like you said, I think it's actually a year, but it's actually a game mode that not many people are bothered about in the reality of the situation. All map packs and DLCs were day one on across platforms, including PC. And to be honest, I think a lot of game developers, they like cross-platform because it doesn't segregate your market. Because every time you release a DLC pack, what you're effectively doing is chopping the amount of available players in half, because some will buy the DLC, some won't, and at that point that means you can't really mix the lobbies, because if a DLC map comes up, you're gonna have to kick half the people out that don't have that. So I think the Battle Pass system works across the board for people like Microsoft, and I think you'll see that more and more in big title games going forwards, that kind of thing. And you do already, don't you, with things like Fortnite and things like that?
Yeah, but you just remind me as well to add to that. I mean, as we've got this, I mean, it's not officially announced yet, but the new Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, I believe it's called. I mean, because when Modern Warfare came out, again, this is like the reboot of the original COD 4, right? But bringing it into today's modern world. But the multiplayer there, again, the introduction of the Battle Pass, all this stuff, it was kind of seen as if this game would become like a live game. So like games like Fortnite, which are the same game, but they just get updated regularly and they play over time.
Yeah.
Especially with the introduction and the inclusion of Warzone. I mean, that's stupidly popular with everyone that loves playing that. But with a new Call of Duty now on the block, I mean, are they competing against each other now? Because if you're invested in a battle pass in one game, does that mean that, is this new Call of Duty competing against its own brand? Because you've got people that want to continue with their battle pass in the seasons of Modern Warfare, yet you've got this new one coming out, which is, again, based in the Cold War, so it's not going to have necessarily the modern weaponry and all the rest of it, as we see in Modern Warfare. Do you know what I mean? Like, Is that
I do, and to be honest, this adds to my frustration that I mentioned earlier because, we know goddamn sure them. Activision know what they're doing; they know what the strategy. The only people that don't is the poor bloody players that have to play and pay for this game. Why are we being held at arm's length this long? I don't understand.
I'm sure I've read in the past that about that they wanted the multiplayer to be. This is why Modern Warfare 2 Remastered didn't have multiplayer, because they didn't want to split the multiplayer fan base. They wanted to consolidate it into one platform, which I thought was great. But again, with a new Call of Duty coming out, do they release Cold War as a single player experience, but then add the multiplayer content into Modern Warfare? Do they add that as an extra mode or as an extra package? Does it come with old school weapons? Does it have old school maps as well? Do you blend them together?
Yeah, they're all very valid questions, and I just hope they get answered by the end of this month because myself and a lot of people are running out of patience, to be honest. Just one last one, talking about exclusivity. I don't know if you've seen, but the new Square Enix Avengers game, PlayStation are getting an exclusive Spider-Man character.
Yes, I've been reading about this today. I say I find it funny, but I find it funny because what we've just talked about in terms of all the other Sony exclusives, and it's a bit of a lot of Avengers fanboys across the platforms are a bit miffed, to say the least, that one of their favorites is locked behind a brand.
I'm guessing that if they were really that hardcore, they'd probably own a PlayStation anyway, in the order of wanting to play Spider-Man and Miles Morales anyway. I'm guessing. Is this Xbox people just feeling hard done by? Possibly and probably. Should they feel hard done by? Yeah, I guess so to a certain degree. But these sort of things always exist. Sony own the sort of rights to the Spider-Man brand, as it were, and they they use it and manipulate it to their own end, as you would. I don't know. I just wish, and this is going to sound a little bit off-piste, but I just wish Microsoft would buy the Warner Brothers studios, just so they can get their own kind of Spider-Man in the form of Batman, as it were, just to even the playing field a little bit with this sort of disparity between the two.
Yeah, I get what you mean, but I think what you just said, I think that's valid though, right? I mean, if you are a true Spider-Man fan, and you would have a PlayStation, right? Surely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course you would.
I had Spider-Man on the PS4, and it is a brilliant game. And if you're a Spider-Man fan, you 100% should own it. And if you don't own it, then unless obviously financial circumstances left you not being able to get a PlayStation, if you had an Xbox, then I don't see any reason why a true Spider-Man fanboy wouldn't have a PlayStation to play that game.
No, you absolutely would. And to be honest, that neatly brings us back to the very beginning, really, because Spider-Man's one of the games I've not played and was hoping to play on the PlayStation 5 platform and probably will as and when I buy one, to be honest, because obviously that's one of its biggest selling games. And will probably be the first game that they rush to make sure is backwards compatible on the PS5, I'm guessing. So I'm looking forward to being able to pick that up and actually join in the conversations, albeit a couple of years behind everyone else, about how great this game actually is. So,
Miles Morales coming out, I don't think the conversation is going to stop. So
no, exactly. So right, that kind of burns through all of our topics for the evening. I've had a really good time actually. We've discussed lots of sort of intricacies. I've put out a theory out there about all access and perhaps a mid-generation refresh in a couple of years. I'm still currently working on a YouTube video for that, so I'll try and put it up, although I've probably spoiled the entire thing now by what I've said tonight. But it's an intriguing proposition, to be honest. And if Microsoft genuinely do want to follow the mobile phone business model, then if they want to keep those subscriptions rolling in, and Microsoft seem to be all about subscriptions at the moment, then something like All Access, if they can keep people, incrementally buying into that, then I think they'll leverage that in their own favor. So I'd like to thank you very much, Puxley. Have you had a good time?
Oh, it's been good. I enjoy talking about this stuff. I could talk for hours, as we have done.
As we have done. So we're coming up for the 2-hour mark. So I appreciate you co-hosting this with us. I'd like to have some guests coming on at some point. But until then, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.